Whoa! Hold on, guys.
Oh no, not again.
I told you to stop, Susan!
This. Oh no, not again. God, This reminds me of a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah, these things happen though. That's all I can say.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. It's fine.
Okay.
It's part of the beauty of doing shows live.
Yeah, we've all been there.
You know, like it's the craziest thing when you think you have them in a nice cage.
I know.
Like you had so many others in the same cage, but then they just get out.
They do.
Really,
they always find a way. It's like they are Houdinis.
Bristolian Dave keeps them in a shed, but you know. Tonight we're going to be talking about The Evil Dead. I saw The Evil Dead on VHS, pirate VHS, back in the day from my amazing video rental store. It was a mother and son that ran it. The son was here, about 6'4", and always wore a 3-piece pinstripe suit. And his mother was kind of like a Estelle Getty, really half his size, and she stood in a wee box at the back. And they'd pull out a book, and the book, Ash, and this book had all the videos that they couldn't put out because they hadn't legally been released yet. So that was where I got and watched my first viewing of The Evil Dead, and I rented it. I think I rented it 3 days in a row.
Like, it's just so crazy to me that, like, in other countries, these video nasties have been so guarded and were such like a luxury item for you to get. You know, when you think about it from an American perspective, it's like it's just pretty crazy because they were so readily available here. Yeah,
but exactly. This was actually this was before it was banned. This was before it was released.
Oh, and you were so lucky if you got like a first gen copy of anything. It was normally like a fourth or fifth gen.
Yeah. So let's what was your first viewing of The Evil Dead?
My first viewing of The Evil Dead, I actually saw the trilogy in an ass backwards kind of way. Like I started with Army of Darkness, then I found Evil Dead, and it was I didn't know at the time that it was like a cut version. I found it in like a secondhand store when I was like 12, 13, and they obviously didn't care about like what age you were. So like, you know, I gave them the money, took it home, watched it, and it was like, whoa, that was fucking cool. And then like I found out later on that obviously it was a heavily edited version. And as I was getting towards the end of my time at school, I met someone who happened to have a video store, and they didn't have a book like yours. You just walked up to the counter and was like, hey man, do you have this? And almost every single time a copy of it would come out on the counter, he'd be like, £5. There you go. So like I'd already got stuff off him, like The Exorcist, which at the time was still banned. I'd got like Cannibal Holocaust off of him and Faces of Death and stuff like that. And I was just like, have you got an uncut version of The Evil Dead? And he was like, please. That's nothing. Of course I got that. Passed it over to me, and then I took it home and watched it, and I was like, okay, that's an even better experience.
Yeah. See, Ashton, you're kind of getting the idea now, which is probably right. They were kind of like dealers over here when we were getting. It was like going to get drugs. It was the same thing.
I can relate to it a bit because, like in America, one thing we were like super far behind on was anime. And the only way you could get anime as I was growing up, for the most part, was the bootleg VHS store that was in your local flea market, you know, with like the printed labels and stuff. So if you wanted to watch like Dragon Ball Z Beyond, like the Frieza saga, then that's the way you had to do it. Or if you wanted to see anything else that just was not available here. So we kind of had a different kind of restriction than you guys, but a restriction nonetheless.
Oh yeah, I mean the restrictions that we had, these were considered like highly illegal items. Like the guy that I made friends with that had this video store and all that, it's not there anymore, obviously. You would go in there and sometimes you could hear the police radio scanner going off that he had got in the background, because every now and then he would hear that they were going to go raid his store. I remember one Christmas I went in there and he was like, I'm so glad you're here. I need someone to take these because I don't know where to get rid of them. And I'm about to get raided in about 10 minutes. It's like, give them here. You would take them home and then bring them back after you'd watched them multiple times.
It's like freaking Prohibition, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
movies.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really was. Really was.
Yeah, I was watching a little documentary just the other day there about the Evil Dead, and it might be one of the official ones on the DVDs. I can't quite remember. It was Edgar Wright saying that the copy of the Evil Dead in a video store, somebody stole it.
Yeah.
So people would get something that they really like, they would keep it like a library book and not take it back. That's quite common. So, Ashen, the first time you saw it, when was that?
Well, Evil Dead is famously the movie that made me want to become a horror movie director. So I would have to say it's probably like the fourth horror movie I ever saw. I was a really young kid. My friend opened me up to the gateway of horror, which was originally the Aliens and Predator movies. And then after that, I saw like Prince of Darkness and then the Evil Dead series. I was in love by that point. So I just went straight to the horror section. I'm like, what is the most badass sounding horror movie in this entire section? And how are you going to beat the name Evil Dead? And then you see like a guy with an axe and blood all over him and crazy skeleton hands on the cover and stuff. It's like, that's what you want to get when you're looking to, itch that fix of horror. So that really got me going.
But the Evil Dead here was, it was Mary Whitehouse coined the term the video nasty. That came from her. I think you might have coined it for the Evil Dead.
Because I believe, if I remember correctly, just a little bit of background for you, Ashen. When the Video Nasty scandal started, we didn't have a ratings board. We did for cinema releases, but not for video releases. So you could have a movie like Zombie by Lucio Fulci go into the cinemas. It'd be cut by about 10 minutes. But then the same distributor could put it on video completely uncut. And because of this, it was considered to be, what's it called? The Obscene Publications Act is what we had. They thought that it was like, okay, this is highly illegal to do this. But because there was no classification board, they would often get the film directors over and prosecute them in a court of law for putting out a film that was considered to be obscene rather than the distributors themselves. So they were prosecuting a few filmmakers before they finally came up with the BBFC, which was the British Board of Film Classification, who would then go through these movies and either say, this is banned, this needs to have this, and this cut, or this one's actually okay, we'll just put an 18 certificate on it. And if I remember correctly, The Evil Dead was actually one of the first movies where they brought Sam Raimi over to the British courts to prosecute him for making The Evil Dead. So you had... So because of that, you had the pre-certs. This is an original pre-cert of The Evil Dead. And shortly after this one was brought out, they brought him over to prosecute him. And afterwards, he was found not guilty. So they did a very limited run of these pre-certs where it was a black cover with the Evil Dead logo at the bottom and this huge white writing that just said, not guilty. And those things, they cost you an arm and a leg if you want to find one of those. But these are considered highly collectible. This one, unfortunately, the case is a little bit damaged, which is a shame because it's the original distributor case, Palace Video. I don't know how well you can see that there. And it's still in fairly good condition. So people buy these like they buy antiques and just keep hold of them. And I've got way too many of them.
That's awesome. That is a really cool item. Just the history behind it too is really awesome. So
yeah, it's fascinating.
The strange thing was the BBFC, which is the British Board of Film Classification, not censors, but they are censors. The BBFC actually at the time they didn't see any real problems with the Evil Dead being released. I think they were 50-50, and like half the people there thought it was a over-the-top, ridiculous film, and the other half thought it was a terrible, horrible movie. So it was very much a case of the authorities going ahead and prosecuting this themselves, and even the BBFC were perfectly okay with it being released, even in a slightly cut form. Which it shows you that kind of even the censors over here didn't all agree and see eye to eye on things.
Yeah. And the thing is it was considered to be something that they did back then, of getting the filmmakers over and prosecuting them, and that was a small moment in time. They still do it now. Like when a Serbian film was released, they bought the filmmaker over here and tried to prosecute him for putting out an obscene publication, and several other countries did as well.
It doesn't make any sense to do that across borders, like
No,
if
it
somebody
doesn't.
makes something in America
Yes.
or wherever, and then it goes to a different country, that's like beyond your control most of the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I agree with Robert Romano.
Did you guys ever have like a theatrical release for The Evil Dead?
We did, yes. It had already been theatrically released, hadn't it, prior to this?
Yeah.
A lot of the furore around the video nasties was not really based on the films. It was based on the covers and the names more than anything. So Driller Killer, for instance, which is quite a dull, sedate kind of like movie. Boring might be a word some people would use for it. That was a cover. It was a scene with a drill going in the head. It was close up, and they took full page ads and all the kind of trade papers when they brought it out. So it wasn't the film that people were shocked by. It was just that image alone in the name Killer Driller, and you can see that in an awful lot of. There are one or two that you kind of go, "Whoa, there's things in them," but in most cases, it was very much the marketing of the films. It was just too much for their sensibilities to take.
Yeah.
What amazes me is that Driller Killer, even though it's such a dull movie, and I remember even watching it in my younger years, and it was really disappointing. It's how it's still around and still getting releases. There's like a lot of good movies that still haven't gotten out of VHS yet, and Driller Killer is like getting a new like Blu-ray release, 4K release. It's like
it was only a couple of years ago that Arrow Video put Driller Killer out on Blu-ray, and yet there's movies like Samuel Fuller's White Dog that we only had on VHS over here. The Monster Squad we only had on VHS over here. I would love it if White Dog they did eventually bring out on Blu-ray over here, but the Monster Squad I'm still waiting.
White Dog, I'd forgotten about that. I saw that in the cinema.
Such a great movie.
Yeah, because that was a hugely controversial film that was released.
Absolutely.
I don't know what would happen if that was released today.
Oh, don't. Let's not even go down that road.
That's a whole different show. We'll not do that. Okay, now I'm going to share the BBFC's website here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the Cannibal Holocaust poster. Yeah. The thing was, it's like you had these very prim and proper wee ladies that were running these stores, and they were just putting up these posters, and and it was like, I mean, you'd walk in, you see some kind of things, and you'd be like, wow, that's shocking, that's disgusting, that's horrible, how'd they get away with that? Can I have that, please? And you'd rent it just to see, and they say, what age are you? And you go, 18, and they get it. This is the BBFC's website, and they've got essentially their history of the Evil Dead. And this is what I was saying, it was divided by those who thought it was over the top, not taken seriously, and those who found it nauseating. I found it really scary when I first saw it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I couldn't understand why people didn't. I think the fact that it was a copy of a copy of a copy, which, made it even scarier. But even to this day, it's if an audience is a really good, funny, scary movie.
For me, the scare, like, it never was super scary to me. I just really enjoyed like the energy of the film. So like a movie like Prince of Darkness scared the living shit out of me, especially with like how they end that film. But the whole possessive element and all that stuff that happened in Evil Dead, it was so over the top that it didn't really scare me, but it was like fun, like riding a roller coaster. So it really drew me in. Yeah,
I think that's what I mean by scare. I mean, it had a really good sense of taking you up to the crescendo, and then you'd have the release, and then keep doing it over and over again. Yeah, fun scare, rather than like you say, Prince of Darkness or something like that. That kind of gets under your skin when you're watching it. But they did cut 49 seconds from the original release it was here and gave it an X certificate. And they say here it was unfortunate for the distributors, that's Palace, of the Evil Dead, that their film was released at the height of the video nasty scare. It's almost like they're distancing themselves from it. The video nasty scare made the BBFC. They went from having like 1 week kind of like floor in a building to buying the whole building because they made so much money, because every film that was distributed in the UK since then has had to go through them, and they charge by the minute. to look at it and give you a certificate. So you got to pay the censor. So essentially, they were set for life after that.
Yeah.
And that's still the way it goes even today?
Yeah.
It is indeed. And
educational stuff can be exempt, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It's like if the Comic Code Authority never went away.
Pretty much. But what some people don't realize, they think that the filmmakers have to go, here's my movie, here's how long it runs, here's the money for each minute. And then bear in mind, it's something like about $50 per minute. So if you've got a 90-minute movie, that's a hell of a lot of money. Okay. Imagine if you got a 2.5-hour epic, that's a hell of a lot of money as well. But what a lot of people don't know is when you submit something to the BBFC, you have to say, I want this to have a PG certificate, or I want this to have a 15 certificate. And then they come back and go, well, it won't make a 15 certificate. It would have to be an 18 or maybe even lower. So therefore, if you can't certify it yourself and you guess what they're going to give it wrong, you then have to pay for the process all over again, because they're going to tell you, like, if you want it to be this certificate, then you've got to take this out, you've got to take this out, you've got to take this out. And the amount of times, directors would be like, okay, we'll follow those guidelines to the letter. They submit it again, and then they go, see, it's still not quite right. You might want to take out a few seconds here and a few seconds there. So they make so much money.
That's a massive scam.
It's not just that, because this paragraph here talks about it required that the BBFC should consider the suitability of a video for viewing in the home. So that meant that you may have been given a certificate that was like a PG certificate for a movie and cinematic release. Yeah. But they then deemed that movie, when it was put onto video, if small children were able to see it on their own, it shouldn't be a PG, so they'd have to watch the film again. Maybe charge you a special rate, not quite as much, I don't know, but they still charge you for it, and they would give it a higher rating, or you would have to cut it to get the lower rating that you already had in the cinema. Yeah,
I think it was Con Air with Nicolas Cage and John Cusack. When that got rated for cinema, it was rated as a 15 certificate. When it came out on home video and DVD, it was rated an 18 certificate. So they had bumped it up by one certification.
It was only a couple of years ago where the Arrow released that The Burbs was released uncut in the UK.
Yes.
The Tom Hanks movie, The Burbs, has always been cut because it has that short clip from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
So that had to come out. Yeah, that was taken out to get the PG. It's a mindset of the British Board of Film Classification that it's a very middle-class sensorial mindset which believes that they can watch any obscenity on the screen and it won't affect them. But the poor working-class idiots out there like us, we're going to be turned into, I don't know, axe-wielding maniacs.
I mean, it happened to me, but I'm not a normal person, so...
Exactly. But you are the...
We wouldn't want you to be.
How many copies of the Evil Dead do you have, Ashen? Because you shared that video, and if anybody hasn't seen it, make sure that you subscribe to Ashen's channel as well. You review stuff on there; it's really good.
I got lots of copies of everything. Every time a release comes out, I just go to try and pick it up immediately. I used to collect all the VHS tapes and everything like that, but then I moved up to DVD. And I got rid of my VHS tapes. And so ever since DVD was a new thing, I've collected every single edition that came out, with the exception of that book that you actually have, the DVD release of the Evil Dead, when it comes in the Necronomicon. The first and second movie did that.
We'll just have a big up Lucifer for a second.
So I believe you're talking about this one. This is the Necronomicon for the first Evil Dead movie, even though it says The Book of the Dead, its original working title. Absolutely beautiful little edition that you can get hold of. It was released in the UK and the US. This is actually a US version of it, which there really is no difference whatsoever. But you guys in the US had something that we didn't have, and that was the Evil Dead 2 Necronomicon, which is just as gorgeous, just as beautiful, all this lovely replica artwork from the original prop and stuff. And these, if you pressed that eye, it would scream, but the power's gone from this one, so that's not happening anymore. But I did hear a rumor that if you put these in the fridge overnight, when you take them out in the morning, the texture will feel like actual dead skin. Whether there's truth to that or not, I do not know. Take that one with a big pinch of salt. But they're great additions to have anyway.
I am not putting my Book of the Dead into the fridge.
Yeah, I actually owned those at one point, but I had to move. I've moved like a lot of times, like over 30 times in my life. And one of those moves, I had to get rid of everything. So that had to go. My entire collection at that time went. And I really didn't start building everything up again until I got my own house. Yeah. And then, I started collecting all the various editions. I would go online, buy everything. And, from there, I just got a massive collection of Evil Dead stuff. I'm sorry I didn't bring my collection, but like it's like 95 degrees in this shed, and I didn't want everything to melt.
Oh, right.
I tried to shoot my other video real quick, to get it in and out, but I was like, should I bring my stuff over here for them to see? And it's like, no. I'm gonna melt, so I think that they probably have less durability than me.
Well, here we go.
In my dad's attic for a couple of years, got it back and all the latex was flaking off. The one thing that I can say is because I've had those two editions for God knows how many decades, and as you can see, like there's no problem with the latex whatsoever. And that's because I have kept them sealed in a plastic bag for some reason. Just a normal plastic bag, a grocery bag, tape it up in one of them, and it just lasts.
Okay, The Evil Dead, not the most notorious video nasty, but
no.
Unlike the past few weeks, we haven't actually been doing video nasties when we were talking about things. This was actually prosecuted as a video nasty, named a video nasty by the mighty Mary Whitehouse.
People who say, but why shouldn't adults be able to see this kind of thing in their own home? I'm half tempted to say that people who make that kind of demand, knowing that children are likely to see it, aren't really themselves very mature and adult. As
a horror movie, where does it actually stand in your rankings? And I guess, Ashen, for you, it's right at the top. So can you explain why it's something like that's right at the top rather than something like Prince of Darkness or any of these other films?
It's at the top, not because it's like the best horror movie, but because it's personally the one that impacted me the most. When you watch this movie, it's really a grassroots kind of horror movie. You could tell these people had no budget. They were busting their ass to get this movie out. They struggled to make it. You could go back and watch like the documentary about it and, all the struggles and trials that this film brought out to them. And you can even see it in the filmmaking, the like rough around the edges, the bad wigs, the makeup peeling and cracking on the face, showing little flaws. But, regardless of all this, it had this energy to it that just drew you in. The interesting camera angles, you could already see Sam Raimi doing his interesting camera angles to really make the movie feel alive and compensate for the budget a lot. Yeah. And it was the experience for it that puts it right at the top for me. I would say probably my favorite horror movie, and once again, it's an experience thing, is probably Tetsuo the Iron Man, if you want to consider that a horror movie. But once again, I'm somebody that like really bases my opinion on my favorites with my experience that I have with them, how much it means to me and how much it influences me in my life to want to do something like that. So that's why I hold it in high regard. Probably number 2 as far as my all-time like favorite, most impactful horror movies are concerned.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think your personal kind of connection to the movies is really important, especially horror movies, and the age you see them. Because I'll always say Dracula AD 1972 is a good movie, even though there's the left side of my brain keeps saying, is it? But yes, it is. It is for all its faults, sort of the right age. And with me, The Evil Dead, I think because it was one of these things where bunked off school. I always got a laugh when I tell people what we used to call bunking off school. Playing truant. We call it dogging in Glasgow. I used to dog school, and get a video. Dogging means something totally different in the rest of the UK. But in Glasgow, when I was a kid, it meant you were playing truant. So I would after lunchtime, if it was like double maths in the afternoon, half hour walk home, I'd walk home, go to the video rental, got The Evil Dead, and watched it, drew the curtains, watched it in the afternoon, which is summer, and was like, this is so good. Told everybody about it the next day at school. Bunked off the next afternoon, went to the video rental, said I want to rent it again, and I rented it 3 days in a row. And it was just, I think I must have watched it a dozen times over 3 days. I just kept watching it. And a bit like yourself, it was like you become aware that this is so cheap and the people make it. Before you even know, you don't know who Sam Raimi is, you don't know who these people are. But you see the stop motion, you've been watching Ray Harryhausen movies, you see how things are done, and you begin to sort of dissect it, and you think to yourself, I could do something like that maybe in the future, I could maybe do something like that. So The Evil Dead for me, I think is an indie horror movie. It's right up there at the top. It's probably, I don't know if it's sacrilegious to say I like the second one better. It's probably my favourite of them, but it is.
I think a lot of people would agree.
Yeah, but it's right up there. It's maybe not. It didn't have quite the same effect on me as Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I first saw it, or The Exorcist.
Sorry, as far as like better made movies are concerned, though, like I love Evil Dead #1, but #2, now that's an experience. I mean, even my grandfather, who hated horror movies, watched Evil Dead 2, and he laughed his ass off at the plate scene where he's smashing himself in the head. He said that was one of the funniest scenes he's ever seen in cinema.
Like there's plenty of movies like American Beauty that reference movies like Bride of Reanimator or the first Reanimator, should I say. There's movies like High Fidelity that references the Evil Dead 2. There's a whole scene where they're having a discussion like, you haven't seen Evil Dead 2, you have to see Evil Dead 2. But you don't see that with the first Evil Dead or Army of Darkness. So just that alone makes me believe that there are probably a lot of people out there who are like, I'm a huge fan of the Evil Dead, but Evil Dead 2 is something else. That's like, you have to experience Evil Dead 2 because that's exactly what it is, an experience.
I love how they did that, though, how they're self-contained like that, all three movies. You don't have to watch any of the other ones, and you get like a fresh take every time, leading up to where the story's going.
Yeah, and they don't link together as direct sequels. If you try to do that, you go crazy. It's a bit like the Bond movies. If you try to link them all together, you're going to go, wait a minute. It totally doesn't work if you try to do that. It was a case of the second one. It was because they were going with Universal, I believe, that were distributing the second movie. Because they were doing that, I think that's why maybe New Line wouldn't release the footage or something. It's different. One of those kind of things.
And bear in mind, it's kind of a tradition with Evil Dead to kind of like remake itself, because I don't think people realize the first Evil Dead movie is a remake of a short movie that Sam Raimi made called Within the Woods. And Within the Woods is like a 20-minute version that's very, very different. And of course, they've been trying for ages to put out an edition where you can get Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness and Within the Woods. But once again, there are some weird rights issues that are very complicated going on, where even if they mention it in a documentary, they cannot show a clip from Within the Woods. But there's been bootleg copies of that going around for God knows how long. Most comic book conventions, you'll find someone who's doing the dodgy DVDs, and they'll be able to sort you out with a copy of that, and you'll be really shocked at how different it is.
Musical as well, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Evil Dead the Musical, which there's never been like an official DVD release or anything, but there are bootleg copies of that float about. Yep, the actual music from it, they got the cast into a recording studio, recorded it properly, and put it out there, so you can actually buy that on CD. And it's got some wonderful, wonderful songs on there.
I was just wondering, do you know what the most grievous scene was with the British censor? Would you want to guess the one scene that... not so much the British censor, but the powers that be.
I'm thinking the eye gouge.
That got a slight cut, but the scene that got cut more was actually the pencil scene, I think. I think that was
in the leg.
It was the pencil scene, and it was also the trees.
The trees.
Oh, I forgot about that. I don't know how I forgot about that one.
How could anyone forget that?
Yeah, the tree, that was shocking. That scene.
Because
Yeah.
Sam Raimi said himself after they tried to prosecute him that he was like, "Damn, I wish I had not made the scene with the trees, because then he may not have had to be taken to court."
Our British censor has this thing about anything that kids can imitate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
They watch that and they just see them all going to school the next day, sticking pencils in people's eyes and wherever they can stick pencils, you know.
Yeah.
Which is why we never had nunchucks. They were always cut out of the movies for years and years.
Yeah.
It's why
the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, you don't actually see Michelangelo with nunchucks. It's things like he goes to like that delicatessen bit and he's like taking off the sausages and shit and using them instead.
Yeah. And they call them Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles here because ninja's too adult for the kiddies, you know.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
At one point, they considered censoring the title of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers because they thought that morphin sounded too close to morphine.
Yeah.
Yep. Welcome to the UK.
Welcome to the UK. I think Germany's worse, but welcome to the UK. Talking about the trilogy, Army of Darkness. What are your thoughts on Army of Darkness? We might as well go through them all.
Who's up?
You first, Ashen.
On you go, Ashen.
All right. Army of Darkness. I love the movie, but it's probably my least favorite because it focuses so heavily on the comedy. I think visually it's the best done one, the highest budget. You know, it was created to be the best in the series, but with my sensibilities for horror and comedy, I definitely prefer the other two over it. But there's a lot of great memorable stuff in it, but you could almost feel, because Sam Raimi even said in the movie he was disappointed even himself in the movie because he had to make Bruce Campbell into a heroic character, and he did not want to do that. He just wanted Bruce Campbell to be this coward the entire time. So and you could see that, him coming out of his shell and becoming the hero and everything like that. But much like him, I don't know, I just felt like the other two were a little bit more true to the spirit of like the Evil Dead series. Yeah,
understandably so. And like, you know, I think Army of Darkness is the most quotable of the three movies. Like, how many people have said, "This is my boomstick"? Army of Darkness. "You ain't worth jack shit and Jack just left town." Army of Darkness. "Give me some sugar, baby. Hail to the king." These are all Army of Darkness quotes. No,
good,
you don't
bad,
hear
I'm the guy with the gun.
Yes. See, no one quotes Evil Dead 2 or Evil Dead. It's always Army of Darkness. But Army of Darkness is one of those movies where first time you see it, especially like first time I saw it, I was like 10, 11 years old. So at that point, I'm not too worried about substance. I'm all about the style. And I'm just like, wow, visually, this is fucking great. And then you start getting a little bit older. You watch it again and you're like, really? Really, that's what you're going to do? This is probably one of the most illogical fucking movies out there. I mean, just the end bit, depending on which ending you see, where Ash is back at Esmar and, you know, you've got the Deadite there and everything, and he's got his shotgun and he stood on like some of the shelving, and then he throws the gun up in the air. He then jumps onto the cart and catches the gun. Why throw it in the fucking air? Why not just jump onto the cart, cock it, and shoot the motherfucker? It doesn't make sense. You know, the whole movie is riddled with shit like that.
Yeah.
And
yes,
groovy, of course.
It never bothered me. It was I always thought, oh, this is what happens. You're working with Dino De Laurentiis. You're going for like a 15 certificate, or because it got an R in America. They weren't going for an R. They were going for PG-13, but it got the equivalent of a PG-13 over here. So that's what they were going for. It felt like that kind of movie. I agree with you. It was like this stuff that happens in it because they think it's funny, and most of the comedy isn't funny in it. The Three Stooges stuff is just tiresome. But I've always kind of enjoyed it until the last time that I watched it, which was just a few weeks ago. And I still like the first 15 minutes or so. If they'd kept the idea of the different kind of like factions with the knights, you know, and bringing them together, that kind of, if they kept that kind of whole thing going, rather than sending them off. I think it would have been better, but I found it to be kind of boring, not very funny, and just the odd visual every now and then. You're like, oh yeah, like that's cool. I kind of wanted to punch Ted Raimi every time he popped up. You know, it's like play a game of punch or take a shot every time Ted Raimi pops up. I found myself not liking the movie. I could watch it again in 2 years' time and go, oh, I was too hard on it. That'll probably happen 2 years from now. I'll watch it again, so it was too hard on it. But yeah, I watched 2 after watching it. Did this on purpose because I thought 2 is better, so I'm not going to watch it first. Still thoroughly enjoy 2 every time I watch it. And the comedy works in it. And the Three Stooges type slapstick works in it.
Yeah, you know, like a lot of movies were trying to turn adult properties into younger, like kid properties and stuff at the time. Like even the Toxic Avenger 2 and 3 were terrible, and they were trying to appeal to children with those movies after making the first movie rated R. And then finally in the 4th movie, they were like, this is the real sequel. And it's like, yeah, because it's for adults. And I think that a lot of stuff at that time, because even RoboCop, they were making RoboCop movies to be for like children and stuff.
Yes.
And I think like this movie held up better than those, but it still felt the effects of it, in my opinion, like big time.
Oh god, yeah, big time. Because of course, like that was around the time that they were putting out.
I've just seen the poster. Better than RoboCop 3.
You could put that on pretty much every fucking movie that isn't RoboCop 3, to be honest with you.
The sort of horrific scenes that I have had to see and other members of Parliament have had to see, I believe they're living in a different world to that world that I live in. I believe that research is taking place, and it will show that these films not only affect young people, but I believe they affect adults as well. It goes far too far.